Of Gearbox and CTO, and I'm responsible for the technical part, so smart contract development, all stuff related to the technical side, some advices to front end, back end, and so on. And I'd like to introduce my friend Yaron from RiskDAO. Yaron is working on Gearbox from the risk side, but I think, Yaron, you can talk a little bit what you're working on.
Yeah, so RiskDAO is a framework or collaborative framework for risk management and risk advisement to lending markets, stable coins, and yeah, we work a lot in helping also Gearbox help avoiding, like bad events, bad debt, failed liquidations, etc.
Oops. So what we talked today in terms of Stable Summit, just a short story about Gearbox. It was designed on S Global Hackathon in the winter of 2021. We delivered the first version in the December of 2021, and it's more related for margin trading. Then we decided that maybe it's a great possibility to go to leverage farming, and we released the V2 in November of 2022 here. Oops, sorry. And the main point what we are focusing was leverage farming. And of course, people like to use stable coins to make it possible to use LP stables as collateral. We learned a lot how to make price fit, because when you build a protocol which use some stable coins and LP coins as collateral, you should twice check what's going on and how we can consider each asset, because we have like a nightmare, and I will talk a little bit about that later. So why we sleep not well after launching of V2? It's pretty easy. The TVL skyrocketed to 125 million. Now it's lower, but it was for a long time. And leverage farming, when we started, was very, 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 very popular, especially for stables. And of course, we have something like a nightmare when someone could really attack our price feed or try to fool it. And later in presentation, I discuss that maybe it's the mainly hack. Yesterday, I was on DeFi Summit, and it was one presentation. And one guy showed us a slide when the price feed attack has the highest top place in case how people try to steal money. So basically, it's a big problem, and for all working on Gearbox, we consider different cases of different attacks. And price feeds is the most significant part we should protect from different manipulation, because as you know, you can really find auditors who check your source code. You can definitely believe there is no different attacks like, I don't know, re-entrancy and so on and so on. But when we consider real market, we changed every time. When we start to focus on liquidity problems and different stuff, and Gearbox itself works with different protocols, it could be some losses. So let's talk what we did. But before we go, just a short 5 sentences how we work. So basically the idea of Gearbox based that Gearbox is two-side protocol. As you can see on the left side, there are liquidity providers, people who provide their money to the pool just to get high interest rates. So this is passive investors, their idea to provide their money and forgot and just get high yields. And on the right side, you can see borrowers. So these people are risk takers. They know how to make money in DeFi. They need leverage to earn more. So they go and open credit account. This is our DeFi primitive in the center. They provide initial funds when they open credit account and immediately got margin loan from the pool. For example, you open credit account in ETH. You provide 10 ETH and you take a loan of 90 ETH from the pool, so you have 100 ETH on this credit account. And credit account behave like a smart contract wallet. So you can do different transactions with this wallet. We have some limits. Of course, the first part, you can't withdraw this money into the pocket because it will be so easy. You open credit account, steal money, and that's all, yeah? And another part, after each transaction done, we check that account has enough collateral. So if you want, for example, you have 100 ETH, you go to Uniswap, and it's fully nature of Uniswap. Uniswap do not know that it's Gearbox or not. You just swap this 100 ETH to USDC, for example. Then you go to Curve and deposit this USDC in 3 CRV pool, and you get 3 CRV. Then you go to another Curve pool, deposit this 3 CRV into Frax 3 CRV, to Convex, and so on. So it's up to you. It's on very open things, and you shouldn't have some predefined strategies. Everything up to you. It works like a wallet. And of course, the main reason why it's very dangerous, if someone could fool our system on the latest step when we check collateral, it means that you can try to steal money and we can got hacked. And it's a problem, and how we solved. So basically, when we compute collateral after each transaction, the best representation of credit account is like such a table. We have a list of different assets. We have quantities and prices, which we got from the price feeds, what I'm talking with Yaron today. So basically, by multiplication, we can compute the total value and compare it with your debt. In some simple way, if this amount bigger than debt, the account could be considered healthy, correct? Yeah, because it has much more assets than debt, and you can't steal them. So basically, in terms of liquidation, we can sell everything from this list and get debt back. Is it clear, guys? Perfect. Yes. So this is the formula how we can do this. And of course, it's a pretty simple. If you can pump the price, if you can, for example, make our 10 times more, it means you will get more time as total, and you can steal money. Pretty simple. Why? Price feeds attack is very, very dangerous for us. And here you can see, for example, I open DAI credit account. I borrow 850 and provide my own 150 DAI on it. So here I have a 1000 DAI, and it has a USD value of 1000. DAI is a quite stable token with a large amount of liquidity. It's hard to manipulate, but you can find some token A. You can swap DAI to token A. Let's consider it's also some stable, so it's 1 by 1. We keep 500 here, and you got 500 token A. Then you pump the price from 1 to 2. Pretty good stable. $2. Yeah, it's like a banknote, so the next 5 will be up. And then, of course, because it's considered as 1000, you pump the price on the price oracle, you can withdraw this DAI. As a result, you withdraw 500 DAI, and your profit is 350. And because Gearbox already passed the check, we consider this account as healthy. On the next stage, when the price comes back, someone could liquidate it, but at the end, we have a bad debt. It's why we called it price oracle attack. And in our masterclass, we will discuss how to eliminate possible risk, what we learned from our history, and we talk a little bit about some unexpected cases, how to solve it. So basically, this is our code, and Gearbox supports different price feeds, which really has a programming interface like Chainlink, because initially we work with Chainlink. I'm personally talked with our technical team and other protocols about different oracles. And there are a lot of ideas, but Chainlink is #1 still in the industry. So basically, of course, many others come to the scene, but still you can, if you want to have similar protection like Aave, and Aave holds billions of dollars, and they have only one source of price data, which is Chainlink. So we decided that it's a good way to understand that this battle-tested thing works for us as well, because if it works for Aave, it works for us, because Aave never worked hard with this price oracle. And let's consider in today our workshop 3 different price feed which we use in Gearbox related to stable coins. And the first one is chain link price oracle. I also mentioned about how we use it, we trust in Aave. So my first question, guys, what do you think? Is it safe to use chain link directly as a good source of price feed for stable coins? What do you think? No? Why? It's included. So basically, thanks. It's a really good point. It's called a deviation because you have a current market price. But if you go a little bit deeper, you can understand there is no way to measure current market price. Of course, it's also some aggregation, and Chainlink did this job really well. But still, any other option? Is it safe to use Chainlink? You have, just imagine, you have 120 million, you go to sleep, you close your eyes and say, okay, is it okay to use Chainlink? Or I can be awakened for someone and say, hey guys, no money in Gearbox, get up. You should decide and find the answer for this question. It's real. Yeah, okay, so I think Yaron will be like a bad policeman who can talk how to hack Chainlink. So Yaron, your time.
Yeah. First of all, I think in general, right, and Gearbox does trust Chainlink for, like most assets. But of course, it's always best to put some sanity checks and constraints on top of it. So that like here the talk was originally about stable coins as collateral. So this is an example on how price sometimes can be easily manipulated, or at least cheaply manipulated, and it's happens to be an example with a stable coin, but it's also why it is possible to do by a stable coin. It's not coincidence. It is because stablecoin liquidity is very largely dominated by a Curve Uniswap formula, which is either Balancer or other places. But eventually it's the Uniswap formula, and Uniswap formula is highly asymmetric. And LUSD, so these are historical numbers, these are not the current numbers, but LUSD is notoriously known to be traded a bit over the peg. And as an holder, you might not really care if it's traded like 2 or 3% over the peg, but it has like huge consequences on the liquidity. And here what we see at the time this snapshot was taken, LUSD was traded at about 1.03 USD. As a result, you could sell a lot of LUSD and it barely moved the price. However, in the converse direction, it was enough to buy only 6 million of LUSD, and it would already, you will get a slippage of 5%, which means you will pump the price by at least 10%. Which means that with $10 million, you can likely even pump it by 20-30%. So this is something very highly asymmetric. And at certain point, the numbers here were even lower. Even $3 million were enough to pump the price by over 10%. It should be noted that LUSD in theory has some mechanisms that should somehow make sure the price doesn't pump too much over 1.1. The thing is that we never see it actually happening in the wild. LUSD was traded a bit higher than 1.1 for few blocks. These mechanisms were never applied. Here it's also likely that, if LUSD were to trade higher, then after maybe, 10-20 minutes, it will go back down because of these mechanisms. But at this scenario, there's really no way to know how Chainlink will continue to quote the price, and that this is why price manipulation was a real concern.
Thanks for this explanation. Yaron told us about this potential problem because basically, of course, a lot of us trust for things because it's easier with others. ERC token works as usual, and if you make a transfer, they transfer token all time. But keep in mind, they are all smart contracts and they could have some internal logic. We believe that stable coins are usually stable, but as you can see, LUSD and some stables with lower liquidity could be simply manipulated. And of course, some malicious actors could find the way how wait until the moment comes and try to manipulate. So to eliminate such case, we fix the oracle by adding a price cap. So basically, we limit LUSD with the value like 1.02 or 1.04. And if the price is higher, it looks like manipulation. And it's a good point because in stablecoin, we believe that the price should be around 1. Correct? If LUSD costs $2, it's something unexpected. And of course, for our purposes, if we consider that if it could be done on a long time, we can of course update the system and find the way. But if it's time for one block, it's enough for even for arbitrageurs who build these MEV bots to really take a lot of money from Gearbox. And we have this cap, so LUSD never could be more than 1. I think 1.0.
I think 1.1.
1.1 maybe, yeah. So we believe it's impossible, and it really protects funds on Gearbox of this price manipulation. And for stables, it works. You could not make the same rule for ETH because you never know. Yeah, ETH start their journey from $0.01. Now it's around 2K, and we have seen 4.5, and we definitely believe it will be more than 10K. So we could not make a cap. It's a bad news for all of us. But if we consider stable coins, it's a good way. So perfect. What's about LP price token? It's also highly manipulatable. And here you can find any Chainlink or other price oracle who can definitely give you a price for earn position, for example. Yeah. So the problem with Yearn, it could be also computed pretty simple, because what we do, we just get price per share. It's data from Yearn smart contract and multiply it to underlying price. For example, if you have something like USDC, we get this price from Chainlink, and we believe now it's safe because we have no ideas how. Of course, we know that USDC is not always 1. Yeah, we have also good case when I was awakened by Ivan and he said it's totally rock USDC going down. Yeah, of course. We could not, of course, expect this, but still the system would work because, as you can see, we get this price from Chainlink, and when USDC going down, a lot of people made money on Gearbox who really have a debt in USDC and provide it to Curve, and Curve has a few tokens in 3CRV, for example. So basically, the price of the Curve token moving down much slower than USDC, and there are some people who made a lot of money in Gearbox. So it was really fun when people using leverage farming not only save their money, they really get a lot of income. But if we consider this formula like a price per share multiplying to underlying price, could it be safe or not? What do you think about? Yeah, sure. Yes, yeah, but it's okay because let's consider we have some parameter which is called liquidation threshold. It really always less than 1. So when we compute collateral, we multiply these two things by liquidation threshold, and it could be like 0.8. And this liquidation threshold already take into account Chainlink deviation between real price and delayed price through the Chainlink. However, I think there is much more technical problem with Yearn, and maybe you have seen or maybe you have read some articles about hacks related to this approach and how we can really protect assets there in terms of getting price. Sorry? Yeah?
If the price per share is no longer correct.
Yes, correct. So basically here, if we trust this formula, we make an assumption that Yearn could not be never get hacked. And in terms of hack, I talked not only about real hack when people could take money. I talk about the case which is not considered by your team as legal one. Yeah, and Yaron as a policeman could also talk a little bit, a good example how people hacked another protocol based on your price. It was with the cream protocol. I think maybe some of yours know about this hack. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. It's not related to Gearbox because you could not really, we have no pool in your token or similar, so it could not be. But it's a good example if you trust 100% of the data you get from external protocol, how it could be. Yaron, please.
Yeah. So again, here the setup is a bit philosophical because the short answer is that it's not necessarily you had any alternative with the Oracle, but it's more about how, you know, putting some sanity rate limits around the Oracle could mitigate, you know, scenarios no one would ever expect. And here the scenario was simply that someone donated a lot of money to Yearn, right? And then like on the face of it, you know, okay, if I decide to donate to someone, how can I actually make profit out of it? Okay, and this is something that Cream Finance didn't expect. You know, now it sort of became the standard, but this is part of Gearbox decision to put some, you know, sanity bounds around the prices in order to mitigate such unexpected scenarios. The technical details here is that you had some Yearn vault. You know, think of a Yearn vault as just, you know, like a pile of money. You can put money inside, and the value is just the amount of money there. But Cream Finance did the catastrophical mistake of letting people borrow this vault. And then if you can borrow this vault, and you know, you can also deposit it back and borrow again, eventually you can build a position of this vault which is actually bigger than the entire circulation of these vaults. So think, you know, maybe think of gold as an example. If you can hold more gold papers than the actual gold circulation of gold. So in this case, you know, the attacker had bigger exposure to these assets than the entire circulation, and then it just donated some money to these vaults, which pumped, you know, so he lost by the donation because, you know, he held only a relative amount of these assets, but he had exposure which is bigger than 100%, so he had a huge profit out of it as well. And then of course he borrowed something against this overinflated position and just ran away with the money.
Yeah, thanks for get explanation. And at this point, of course, when such shit happens with other protocols, and we can learn from that, it's okay because until it's not our protocol involved. And to mitigate this risk, we also use a similar way for bounding. So here you can see it's not maybe well good in the code, but here we have a revert zone. If the price is lower than bound, we just revert it, because if you can provide very, very low price, you can liquidate all people who have position in Gearbox, which is not good. And it's also another way how we can be attacked. And if we go more than upper bound, we just use the upper bound as a cap. And of course, this solution is not ideal. But from my point of view, in crypto, usually, if simple solution works much better than complex. Because you could not really find a way. We know how Yearn was hacked with this idea of sending directly money, but we could not really talk you that we are 100% warrant that there is nothing that people could invent more. When we use these caps, it creates some good thing when we can really trust for all LP tokens. So basically, it's not ideal in terms of decentralization because, of course, our whole goal is to build the full automatic way to manage prices. It still requires some humans and Risk DAO, people who control that in Gearbox DAO, how to manage this, but it's really create at least trust that no one could pump it too much or really dropped and manipulate. And the last part, but not least, it's a very good example about curve stable LP token, because curve pools are very, very different. Believe me, we work with many of them. Each time when you open this Viper code, you can find something new types, new interfaces, different contracts, and so on. So it's hard to compare, but for stables, and maybe it's one of the most known pool like 3CRV, when the curves start, it also have an initial idea how to design price feed. And it also a good point just to keep in mind, if you want to design price feed, some initial ideas could be wrong. So here, just check. This is a simple idea. So what we can do, we can really open curve pool contract. Curve pool contract has a method which called balances, and it will provide you clear value how much USDT, USDC, and DAI are in the pool. Yeah, so the first idea is how to compute the price of LP token is just to multiply each of these balance to its price, which we can get safely from Chainlink. So this part could not be manipulated, and then divide them to total supply, because we have in the curve pool some 3 different coins. Yeah, so I compute their value in USD and then divide to total supply. This approach looks very, very natural, correct? Because we know how much money we just divide to total supply and it should work. So basically here you can see an example, but I want to ask Yaron why it doesn't work. So simple, we really believe that it works. But it doesn't work. Why, Yaron?
Yeah, so basically this approach works only when we are in a sort of equilibrium or a situation where everything is balanced and static. The problem here is that, like in any smart contract, this can be invoked in the middle of a transaction, right? And then we don't have any guarantee that this is a stable situation. So like more specifically what can be done here is that the inventory can be manipulated, right? So we have an example here where USDT was almost nothing. So of course if you want to inflate and pump the value of the pool, let's just buy a lot of USDT out of the pool. We will put a lot of USDC into the pool. USDC now worth 1, USDT worth less. So we take a flash loan of, say USDC, then inject, in this example, 44.5 million to the pool. In return, we get 99 million of USDT, where the average price is $0.50, because of course buying more pumps the price. And then we end up with an intermediary step where, okay, we have a balance of 45 million of USDC. We look at Chainlink, USDC now worth $1. Okay, we also have some USDT leftovers, but it's pretty small anyway. And combining with the DAI we had before, now we have $46 million of total value. The total supply didn't change because we didn't mint or burn anything. And the bottom line is that the price pumped by 4x. And now you can say, okay, but we overpaid a lot for USDT. But then after, like at this point, we are, we took a flash loan. Now we can, manipulate, do the attack on Gearbox. And then after the attack, we can just sell back all the USDC. Selling back and forth in almost every automated market maker will give you everything you put in, it will give it to you back, minus some fee, which is much smaller than what we made profit by attacking Gearbox. So yeah, so overall everything here was manipulated, and this is why like the best practice here is not just to take the sum of everything, but actually making sure you take the minimum price of each of the 3 pairs, which also allow you for a nice flexibility in case that, okay, if at certain point, USDT is kind of permanently got depegged. So yeah, okay, either delist it or, have some time to find different solutions and see what to do.
Thanks. And it's another way why people sometimes asked Gearbox DAO, why when we can see how much money we have as collateral, this sum is usually lower than we have, and sometimes it creates something unexpected. Why? I just provide my DAI and now I have like a minus something as a P&L. Because when we use our Chainlink prices, we use this formula which is safe, and you can see it underestimate. So for major cases, we a little bit underestimate LP price, but it's much safer. And basically what I really want to talk today about these prices, and we talk about how monitor them, but the basic idea, never trust your assumption. If you assume that we have one conversation with one protocol, I do not want to disclose who it was, but it was one of the biggest one, yeah? And we talk about USDC, and they said, why you really spend gas to get USDC price? Because USDC price is always one. You can simple hard-code it and save the gas. And I said, no, let's spend a little bit. It's not so big gas spending when you ask Chainlink Price Oracle to get. And when it was a USDC depact, we were really happy that we didn't follow this advice to consider USDC as $1. But it was like assumption in the market around 2 years ago. Then we have an assumption that basically you can simply consider how many tokens in any LP token, just divide the total supply and get the price data. It also doesn't work. Be careful with these assumptions. And even though if you believe that you did your job well, if you believe that you design your smart contract, and we talked with Michel Yegorov from Curve to prove our math related to all our price feeds, it's not enough. And another part which we want to discuss about risk modeling and how we control the system continuously, because it's not enough to build the system and forget. You should continuously monitor and understand what's going on to be the first person who knows that potentially it could be a problem for decision making. And Yaron, it's your job, so please tell what you do to protect Gearbox from these risks.
Yeah, so risk analysis in general, you know, it's very open-ended question, but recall that the main task here is to define liquidation thresholds that will protect us from price decrease and will give liquidators enough time to handle that. So typically, like for normal volatile asset, you know, you just see how it behaves and try to predict, you know, how quickly it will go down. And of course, for stable assets, this is much harder problem because typically the history is such that, you know, nothing moves, nothing moves, nothing moves, and then, you know, UST crashes to zero. So different stable coins have different, you know, properties and modeling, but here what we consider is Liquity's LUSD, which is a very good example because it's relatively a pure decentralized asset without any governance and without any multi-sig decisions that, you know, could affect the mathematical modeling. So LUSD is basically backed by ETH, okay? And as long as there's enough ETH to back LUSD, we can assume that LUSD will never go below 1, because also on top of it, it has like very nice redemption mechanisms, etc. So basically, let's consider a scenario where we actually deposit LUSD and then want to borrow USDC against it. Then the way we look at it is that actually someone deposited ETH and not LUSD. And then he wants to borrow USDC. However, this person held a lot of ETH and actually deposited it in LUSD. And then the bad event that we want to predict is not that ETH will go down only, but that ETH will go down enough and then liquidity will fail to liquidate it. And it will continue to go down such that eventually the price of LUSD will also go down, and only then our liquidators will liquidate it. So for this to happen, we need all the backing ratio of liquidity to first go down, you know, below 1. And this value is publicly available on chain, and we can query it. And only after this amount, and when this value is typically around 2 or so, only after all this price drop, then we need our liquidators to fail, which of course gives very attractive liquidation threshold to LUSD versus other stablecoin. Yeah, so another example here where typically centralized and so like the more complex the token is, the stablecoin is, and the more centralized it is, it's really harder to model it mathematically. Here this slide is mostly to illustrate like the key factor that curve stable swap formula play both in the analysis but also in the dynamic of liquidity and liquidations. This is the famous USDC depeg around months of March. And what we see here is that even if the price got depegged only by 10%, which is still not the end of the world, the DEX liquidity was almost completely drained because of how Uniswap curve stable swap formula builds. So you see in yellow is the balance of USDT, which was like the only token that was still worth 1 at the time. And almost all the balance is now DAI and US dollar, USDC that got depegged. We also see, specifically in this time, it was during a weekend, and we follow it closely. Also, Gearbox followed it closely. The luck on Gearbox was that most of the base assets were either DAI or USDC, which actually went down. So all the debt assets also went down. But there was some interesting relationship between DAI and USDC, and we see that like at certain point the deviation, at certain point DAI deviated less than USDC, then the deviation returned to be the same. And actually there was an interesting dynamic. If you see like at the spike on the right hand, this is just because the PSA module by MakerDAO got triggered again, and like another 1 billion cheap DAI fled into the market, and then price got depegged.
Yes, and I think we also take some time more, but just the latest word that why it's significant to monitor. As I said, there are some possible vector of attacks. As you know, Gearbox has a lot of complex things, and what we really want to do, Gearbox itself was designed as a DAO from the zero-day protocol. We have like a credit account mining, and we're really happy that we have a strong community who help us to monitor and develop the protocol. And here you can see we built a website which is called Gearbox Foundation. So you can go there and you can check all Oracle prices, comparison, and risk events. So our goal to make all this stuff, not only related to Oracles, all possible risk, fully transparent for all contributors. And you can really understand that the big difference between protocol and some centralized exchange who want just to make money, like a Binance, just provide a paper, we have enough assets, and this is some signature. You should not trust no contributor in Gearbox. Please prove yourself. Go to Risk Gearbox Foundation. You can find all deviation from market price. You can find all notification, and here is an example of Risk DAO about liquidity changes and so on to make the most transparent. And I believe this security in price oracles and all other stuff depends on people who use the protocol, who contribute to it, and so on. So maybe the best way is to work together as a DAO to achieve this stuff. Never trust first assumption, as I said in here, continuously monitor and make these things doable for everyone. And we really have a very, very great support for community. Thanks for that. And I think together with Gearbox risk framework, we can really deliver much faster because we provide a lot of tools for community to test what's going on. and how, for example, price fits works and so on. So basically, if you can find something, you can immediately contact devs on Discord and so on, and we will start to fix. But I believe our design and a lot of infrastructure help us to cover these cases. And this is an example, for example, I think I pick it today. So the biggest deviation now is 166% from the market price. But you can go to the Risk Gearbox Foundation and check. So thanks for much. It was our experience we want to share today. If you have you any time for Q&A, or it's all? Yeah, sorry, it's all. Sorry. Thanks so much. Thanks for this session.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to talk with you.